Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar series by the Department of Student Affairs. We have today an interesting webinar on the topic of employment opportunities for young engineers. And we have a very versatile and talented speaker, Mr. Shekharan Menon. Before I introduce our speaker, let me take a moment to welcome Dr. Radha Padmanabhan, our Vice Chancellor, who has joined among the attendees for the event. And our Sneha Prabha ma'am, Director DSA, and other dignitaries who have joined this interesting webinar. Now over to our speaker. You're very lucky to have a interesting speaker. He is the CEO of Edgeposity Learning System Private Limited. He's a seasoned business leader with over 3 decades of experience in corporate and global business management. Started his career as a trainee project engineer in an engineering consulting organization. In his 30+ years of career, he has handled many areas of business operations, sales, software product delivery, customer relationship management, and human resource management of software business. He comes from an engineering background, worked in IT space for 20+ years, and is very keen on bridging engineering education to the industry needs. So the industry demands is what he addresses with his company. He has also invested a lot of time in understanding the employability challenges faced by youngsters of India through close interaction with students, academia, and industry representatives. He's involved in setting up the startup environment. He mentors a couple of startups, and apart from driving activities at Edgeposity, he's also a member of board of directors of a startup in the IoT space, Internet of Things space. This session will definitely be useful for all the engineers who are mulling about what are the opportunities for employment that is available out there. To hear it right from the horse's mouth is an opportunity you rarely get. I'm sure you will all grab this opportunity and make use, take notes, and also be prepared with your questions, which you may take it up towards the end of the session in a Q&A time that we will allot for you. So with this, I'd like to invite our speaker, Mr. Shekharan Menon, to kindly address the students and the staff who has joined this session for valuable inputs and takeaways. Over to you, sir.
So before I start, we got our in the chat, Dr. Radha Padmanabhan, our beloved Vice Chancellor, ma'am. She good wishes to all. It is here. So please, yeah, you continue.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Radha Padmanabhan. Thank you, Sneha Prabha, ma'am. Thank you, Srilega, for the introduction. And I would also consider this as a great opportunity to interact with students because I think as probably Dr. Sneha Prabha also shares the same feeling. When we came out of college, we did not have so much of opportunity to people who come from industry, right? So we had to figure our way out, and we had some of our own difficulties. Now, at least technology supports that and the system supports that. And when I do this, I get a sense of feeling, okay, I'm able to share something with youngsters of this country. And in fact, this whole Edgeposity initiative is very close to my heart for one reason, that this whole employability challenges faced by engineering students or engineers is a huge thing. And I just talk about one of my experiences here. That basically gave me a root shock, which triggered this fundamental thought in my head. So let me just start off with my presentation. Before that, I was just telling Dr. Sneha Prabha and Sri about the presentation of Sudesh. Sudesh is my ex-colleague. We work together in the same company. It's a very interesting thing. I heard the recorded version. He spoke about his experience of running and setting up and running an entrepreneurship or an organization. So those who want to get into the entrepreneurial journey, that's a different journey. And here I'm basically talking more about how you can be ready for the industry. Let me just try and get my presentation on. I just need one confirmation from one of you to make sure that it's visible to all of you.
Yes.
It is.
It is, okay.
You can make it a little bigger.
So, this is the topic. We are just talking about the challenges faced by young engineers in India related to employability. I just want to start off with this. This is an email which came to me. I mean, this is just a news email, right? This is an email which came to me about 10 days ago. I think it is still relevant, which talks about the skill gap in India being in an alarming state. And as you see, the subject is, can educational technology companies bridge this gap? We think we can, and that is why we got into this particular space. And this is a critical point that we all need to start thinking about if you haven't already started thinking about. I'll start off with one experience. Like I just told you, this is one particular experience which triggered this thought in my head of starting something like Edgevarsity or an initiative like Edgevarsity. This is back in my earlier job, Subex, where I spent 19 years. I had an opportunity to head the human resources department also in Subex before I came out of this organization. So one particular recruitment drive that we had, this is all about that particular incident. We wanted to do an off-campus recruitment. Normally we do campus recruitment. We wanted to try an off-campus recruitment. And we were trying to hire something like 15 to 18 trainee software engineers. So when we announced this in a small Google group, we got about 1,000 candidates. And these 1,000 candidates with good academic records, good score, and all of that. So our recruitment team was very happy. We got enough candidates. So getting 15 or 18 will not be a big deal. They thought the job is done. But as we progressed through the activity or the process, what we found was very, very heartbreaking. After the first round, I wouldn't know whether you will believe me or not. 950 plus candidates got rejected after the written test. And when we moved from the first round to the second round, only about 4 candidates cleared that. So I'm talking about a situation of 996 out of 1,000 candidates getting rejected. And believe me, I knew this was definitely not because the students were not good. Because if they were not good, they would not have done academically well. And it was a very, very shocking incident for all of us. And this particular incident triggered this entire thought in my head to try and understand what is wrong with this whole thing. Why do we have a problem like this? Right? No, then I started talking. That is when I really started. 2015 July, I came out of my job in Subex. Then I was looking at some setting up my own ventures. But this continued to be one of my thought process. So I started talking to some of my friends. So I spoke to a gentleman who retired from L&T recently. I spoke to him. So he shared an experience with me. And his experience was, he was interviewing, as L&T recruits people or students from tier 1 colleges and mostly from NIT, IIT and tier 1 colleges. So he was talking about one particular interview where he was talking to one of the good candidates. And towards the end of the interview, he asked him, the candidate handled the interview very well. And towards the end of the discussion, he asked the candidate, what's your favorite topic or subject? And it seems the candidate said welding technology. Then they started discussing about welding. And Arun Dev, my friend whom I spoke to, he was saying as he progressed the conversation, he realized that the student was giving more of a textbookish answer. So he asked him, have you ever seen an industry welding? Have you ever been to any industry where you have seen welding? And I believe the answer was no. Right? So he was basically giving all theoretical answers for the question that he's been asking. This is another interaction I had with one of my other set of friends, senior friends, who worked in the aviation industry. They were talking about one simple situation of aeronautical engineers not being able to answer when a question is asked, when does the wing flap extend completely? Does it extend completely during takeoff or landing? I'm sure all of you listening to this could be thinking that's a basic thing for an aeronautical engineer. And I'm told many of these candidates couldn't answer that. They couldn't answer it correctly. They all understand the function of wing, slat, slap, and all of that, flap and slant, but then they did not know the application part of it. Right? Another very, very debated report. This is a slightly old report. The reason I have put up this 2018 report is for a reason. When this report came out, and this is very specific to information technology space, when this report came out, there was a lot of debate about it. I don't want you to read all of this, just to tell you the fact. Mr. Mohandas Pai and Ms. Kiran Majumdar Shaw said this report is all incorrect, this is not right, this is not the situation, this is an incorrect thing. But later, some of the CEOs and managing directors of IT companies, including Mr. C.P. Gurunani of Tech Mahindra, they came back and said, no, this report has some meaning. It does talk about some of the sense. We do have a difficult situation. Students, those who are listening to me today, my idea is not to scare you. My idea is to share the reality of life with all of you, because we all believe, and we all strongly believe, that knowing the problem is half the solution, or recognizing the problem is half the solution, right? Now, when I heard about all of these, I also wanted to go and look at the data provided by AICTE, because that is something we can take as a Bible, right? So I went and looked at AICTE data until 2019. This is based on a 2019 employability report. AICTE, this particular thing, if you look at the heading, I just picked up this entire graph here. It says, how was the availability of employable talent changed? So in 2014, it was about 34%, which went up to 47% in 2019. This is the entire, all segment of graduates. Speaking specifically about engineering graduates, it was something like 50% in 2017, as you can see on the graph, which went up to 57%. Even when you say 57% is a good news, 50% going to 57% is a good news, no doubt. But even at 57%, you are still talking about 43% people not falling to this employable talent bracket, right? That's a big concern.
Shekaran, is it that PPT, can you make it little more bigger, or is it only me, it is like this? Srilekha, somebody can verify? It is little small in the screen, only.
I have the full slideshow. I have the full slideshow, Dr. Sneha.
But it is not, maybe it is my laptop. Or what about others? It is Excel on my.
Ma'am, it is visible.
Yeah, okay, maybe mine. It's okay. Thank you. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. That's it. So if you talk about the engineering side, so when I say 43%, I'm sure some of you know the statistics. India produces, depending on various reports, the number says 9 lakhs to 10 lakhs students every year, engineering students every year. Even if you take 9 lakhs and take a 43%, that is roughly about 4 lakhs engineers going through this difficulty. So this is where we need to think about why. So these are all the data, right? These are all the data. I put up this data to say that, look, this is the problem that we are dealing with. This is the challenge that we are all faced with today. This is the problem that we have to manage. So why do we have this situation? I repeat, the situation is not because our students are not good. Some of the industries, some of the industry representatives, they probably make a statement saying that, okay, you know what, the youngsters of this current youngsters or current engineering graduates are not good enough. In my mind, that is not a very responsible statement, because that is not the reality, number one. And number two, we should also be thinking as to what is that we are doing to change that. I believe, having spent my time in industry, I've now been a teacher, having spent my time in industry, I strongly believe, and also after interacting with some of this, the faculties, professors and HODs and principals of some of the colleges as part of my preparation, I understand and I strongly believe that this problem can only be solved by people from the industry. Because the academicians, they are good in teaching theoretical aspect because that is their focus area. And that is what they should be focusing on. And they do a fantastic job of doing that. That is why all of you have a wonderful foundation of whichever branch of engineering that you're doing. And they do a great job of it and they will do it. Now, if you have to bring in that industry perspective, what you need to do is you need to get the industry experts to come and do this for you. So only industry can solve this problem for you. So it could come in the form of internship, as long as this internship is properly done, or it could be a specific industry related training program. So the reason for all of this is very simple. When you do your college, your engineering graduates, undergraduation or post-graduation, the focus is largely on the theoretical aspects. And that is absolutely critical because that is the foundation. But when you walk in for an interview, when you walk into an industry, even if you come to my organization for an interview, the questions I or my colleagues might ask you are largely industry related, right? They may not ask you about something that you have learned as part of, say, strength of material in your mechanical engineering. That's theory. The question would be, okay, you learned about this. How do you apply that in the real life situation? If you talk about welding, the question would be, how do you apply this welding in a real life situation? What kind of weldings have you learned about, and what are the applications of those? So because of this entire journey from a university to industry becomes a shaky walk, which is why 43% of students find it extremely, extremely difficult to get here. Now, I just mentioned about the faculties thing, because faculties are so busy with their own teaching and college related activities. They rarely, or they don't even get time to even go spend 2 or 3 days in industry, because our system does not support that. Our system is designed in a particular way that our professors and lecturers and principals and HODs have to spend a lot of their time in college, either teaching or preparing or researching for the teaching activity. So they don't have an opportunity to go and experience that in the industry. And in some cases, unfortunately, our curriculum is also not updated with the latest technology. Just to give you a small example, I have spoken to some of the colleges which offer aeronautical engineering. Whichever college, at least 4 or 5 colleges that I have visited, that I go to, you will see an airplane kept there, which is meant for students to go in and get a touch and feel of it. But which all these aircraft that I've seen are all very old type aircraft, right? And I haven't seen them in the air. I haven't seen them flying. Now, if you learn about a mechanically controlled aircraft and come out of college and go for a job interview or a job in, say, Indigo Airlines or AirAsia or Vistara, all of them use next generation aircraft. Now, today, most of the aircrafts, almost everything is either electronically or computer controlled. And I've spoken to some of the pilots, they say, in fact, they do not need a pilot once the aircraft is taken off until it is landing. Then the pilot job is only just monitoring and stepping in only when things go completely wrong. So it is pretty much automated. So if you just learn about some mechanically controlled aircraft and come out as an aeronautical engineer, unless and until you are oriented with the latest technology in the industry, it will become extremely, extremely difficult for you to get it. So I'm just going back to my statement. It is just not about the student's problem. It is just about the focus area that we have. While we are focusing on the theoretical aspects, we strongly believe the students should be given an industry orientation, industry related training program. And believe me, this is not just we saying, I just want to talk about this. I was just telling Dr. Sneha Prabha just before while we were waiting for you, this is a session happening tomorrow, conducted by Business World. I just got this email today, so I thought I'll just share that with all of you. Yesterday evening. If you see the panelists, all of these people are from the academic background. The Pro-Vice Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, Director of various universities and institutions. So everybody recognizes this is a problem. What is the topic? Delivering job-relevant education can help universities achieve the greater good. All of us recognize this. This has to be done. So it is just about how do we do that. For your benefit, let me also tell you that AICTE formed a new entity called NEAT. The NEAT is formed, as I understand, in January 2020. And NEAT's directive is to basically partner with organizations like us and provide students this industry relevant training program along with the college curriculum that you run in your engineering college. So this is the problem that we are trying to do. Now, this is the situation that we all have been living with for last few years. And 5 months ago, we were all hit with an unexpected situation of COVID. Did it add to the problem? It indeed add to the problem. What happened? If you look at some of the industries are not doing very well. They're badly impacted. To give you some examples, aviation industry. Until recently, most of the airlines in India were flying at 30-35% capacity. Right? Yesterday, I got a pleasant news. One of my colleagues flew on Sunday from Bangalore to Ranchi and Ranchi to Delhi. So I generally ask him whether the flights were full. He said both the sectors were full. So which means industry is coming back. But there's an impact. I mean, let's accept it. There's an impact. And there was a bit of a slowdown in recruitment process. And there were some salary reductions. But I think it is important for all of us to understand that none of these are permanent. All of these are temporary. I'm sure most of you have heard about Atmanirbharta mission or self-reliance mission our Prime Minister announced a couple of months ago. That is going to create, that means we are going to be reasonably self-reliant, right? It can't be 100%, it will take time, but then we will have enough and more job opportunities coming because of that. Then another announcement made by our finance minister about trying to make India a MRO base. MRO stands for the maintenance and repair organization for the aviation industry. As you all know, we have the technical capabilities, we have enough engineers in this country, and we also have cost advantage. So if we can set up more MROs in India, many international airlines would use the service, and that could bring in a lot of business for us. And that will also open up a lot of opportunities for engineers, because all of these MROs need engineers, whether mechanical, aeronautical, electronics, electrical, instrumentation, depending on which field they are into. And immaterial, having spent time in corporate, I can tell you with highest level of confidence, even when organizations are reducing number of people or laying off people, they will not stop recruitment at the entry level. Why? Unless and until they're going to stop the business, they need people to run the business. Now, when they need people to run the business, the best thing they do is, and we all have gone through this, we do something called pyramid management. So the pyramid management is we try and bring in more people at the entry level with an understanding and with a clarity of thought that we could train these people to get them moving up so that the business will continue. So even if it's going to be a bit of a reduction in the number of recruitment, which will happen in the next 3 months or 4 months of time, I think those of you who have just completed your engineering 2020, I do not think you got to be overly worried about it, because the entry level recruitment will not stop. It will continue. When the reduction happens, what you need to do, all of you, make sure that you are definitely better than the rest. Okay. So this is the situation that we are in. So we spoke about the problem. We spoke about some of the statistics. So what do you do? If you ask me, what you need to do is very, very simple. So I'm just borrowing a quote here. When the going gets tough, the tough reinvent. Right? So you got to reinvent yourself. You have to think as to what is that I'm going to do differently. How am I going to make myself different? When I go for an interview with 100 other candidates, if there are only 5 opportunities, how am I going to make sure that I'm going to be one of those 5? Right? That is where you have to make sure that you're skilled enough. I know the skill is a very generic term. It can mean a lot of things. What I'm referring to is, while you have done a fantastic job of learning basic theory of the engineering that you have, whichever stream that you have done, electrical, mechanical, instrumentation, electronics, whatsoever, along with that, top it up with application knowledge. Going back to my earlier example, you would have learned about strength of material as a chapter or a subject in your engineering. Try and understand how is it used in the industry. Think about an industry that you want to be part of. It could be aviation, it could be automotive, it could be, environment management, it could be oil and gas, it could be anything. Think about that. Okay, I have learned about these 5 things in my engineering program. How am I going to use it? What is the relevance of this? Keep asking this question and try and find answer for that. So once you understand the application aspects, the industry orientation is the same thing. The industry orientation automatically comes. So another example could be when you learn about welding, go a little deeper and understand, what are the different types of welding? Where do you use different types of welding? What are the different types of testing mechanism? Where do you use a non-destructive test? What are the different types of non-destructive tests? Why would I use a radioactive or a radiography test as against a dye penetrating and so on? So try and understand all of this. Try to understand this from an industry point of view, so that whatever that you learn, you are able to communicate that or transfer that or explain that in a language that a person from the industry understands and in a manner in which it is applied in the real life situation. So that takes care of these two pies of the circle. And the third important aspect, my sincere advice to all of you, make sure that you also spend and invest, I don't use the word spend, invest enough time in improving your soft skills. That's an important aspect. You might have greatest of the knowledge in terms of technology and all of that. If you're not able to present yourself properly, if you're not able to convince the person sitting on the other side, if you're not able to communicate properly, the person sitting on the other side will not be able to understand what you know and what you do not know. In fact, in our education system, I'm talking about India as a country, we give lot of focus on the theory or the technology or whatever that we learn, which is important. We give very little or no focus to soft skills. Soft skills, there are a lot of things here. I'm being very, very specific about communication or presentation skills, or even how you carry yourself. Tomorrow, if you have an opportunity to go for an interview, how do you carry yourself? So ultimately what you need to do is, in addition to the knowledge that you learn or gain from your engineering program, get ready for the industry. How do you get ready for the industry? Get into learning the application aspects of all the theory that you learn. That is what is meant by industry orientation. So when you go for an interview, going back to the same question, then when you are asked a question, when is the flap fully extended? During takeoff or landing, you have an answer. If somebody asks you what is the performance-based navigation, you can explain that to people. You can explain that as to how it is used. If somebody asks you what are the flight control system, you can explain that. If somebody asks you what are the latest technology used in the oil and gas industry, you can explain that. That is when you are going to excite an interview. So make sure that you focus on these three aspects and be ready for the industry. And this is precisely what Edgevarsity does. So we identified these basically, based on my interaction with people, we identified these as major issues. So what we do is nothing but we bridge this particular gap and make this journey smoother through industry relevant training programs and soft skill training. Now the question could be, who does this industry relevant training program? How are you making sure that the training program provided are industry relevant? We do that by simply making sure that these programs are created by veterans, and not even using the word experts, veterans from the industry. Just to give you some sense of some of the people who work with us here, if you look at this first 4 people that you see on my screen, Mr. Becker, Mr. Radhakrishnan, Mr. Sarman, Mr. Muralidharan, all of them have 35 plus or 30 plus years of experience in their respective field. The first 3 gentlemen are from the aviation sector. So these are the people who created our program. Right? Mr. Muralidharan has about 36 years of experience in oil and gas industry. He's a mechanical engineer. And out of this 36 years, he worked in various plants and companies, including SR and Petropac, some of the Gulf countries, working in the industry. And when he realized the same problem that I'm talking about today, he came back and set up a training institute in India, in Kerala, and he trained tens of thousands of engineers in about 18 years. He ran it for 18 years. So basically, on the oil and gas side, we have picked up a program which has been running for about 18 years, which has trained people, which is constantly reviewed and upgraded. And Sumant, in the whole scheme of things, Sumant is a relatively junior guy with about 14 years of experience. Sumant also comes after his post-graduation. He worked in the aviation field for about 14 years. And then he's now become part of Edgevarsity. So we use industry experts to create this program. And on top of that, we also go to industry to make sure that the program that we are offering to these students are absolutely in line with our, their needs. So in fact, before we starting this conversation, Dr. Sneha Prabha asked me a question. I'm curious to know how you do that. What we do is very simple. We just provide this industry relevant training program, which are created by these experts. And then we also provide the soft skill training, because these are the 2 important aspects that we identify are things which are required to make our students ready for the industry. Now, all of us have this concern. I'm sure you're also the same way. Do we have enough opportunity? Because today, whenever you talk about engineers being unemployable or a lot of unemployability situation with engineers, the first reaction comes, we don't have enough opportunities. That is not the reality. I just want to focus on this, the graph on the right-hand side. It basically, I'm sure all of you know that India has been and India continues to be a large human resource exporter to global resource pool. I don't think any one of us have doubt on that. This particular graph, this is a study conducted by McKinsey, and I don't think we need to doubt the study conducted by McKinsey. They're one of the leading consulting organizations. So what McKinsey says, if you just look at the arrows here, between 1990 and 2010, India was contributing to about 12% of the global resource pool, the trained resource pool, which is expected to go to 27% between 2010 and 2030. And this 27% is of 325 million. That's a significantly large number. So we are not only talking about opportunities in India, we are also talking about opportunities outside, where India as a country and Indians as people, we have an advantage because we deal with language very well. And we are also, we have one of the strengths that we all have is we are, though it is used in the negative term, jack of all, we are able to handle multiple things at the same time. And we are also able to handle multiple areas at the same time. That is the reason I had an opportunity to work in HR, coming from an engineering background and having worked in technology, technical side and sales side. I had an opportunity to work in HR for 1.5 years because we quickly build that skill set and start dealing with things. Right? So the opportunities exist. It is basically for us to make sure that we are ready when that opportunity comes. Otherwise, we could be left behind. So we should not be just wasting our time thinking what to do. There are many people I know, there are many people who are feeling sad and bad about the COVID situation, thinking that the COVID situation has taken away the opportunities. It would have taken away some opportunities. I don't want to run away from that fact, but then feeling bad and sad is not going to solve any problem. That is slightly outside of our control. What we need to do is what is in our control. And what is in our control? To make sure that we are absolutely ready for the opportunities by making sure that we are skilled enough and we are absolutely ready for the industry. Just to give you a sense of, I just picked up 2 industries for the benefit of students, because I don't know how many of you know that what kind of opportunities exist in various industries. If you just look at an aviation industry, I just picked up a simple organization structure of an airline, of engineering department of an airline. There are multiple opportunities exist. There are line maintenance division, technical services division, major maintenance division, quality assurance, and support services. And I'm talking about all of these functions which recruit engineers. I'm not talking about functions which do not recruit engineers. So I just reading somewhere, 15% of the staff in an airline are from engineering side. Though we all think that most of them are on the flying crew, cabin crew, and all of that. They say 15% of the staff are from the engineering side. Now, just quickly going to the oil and gas industry, another example, just to give you a sense of it. In oil and gas industry, you have this contracting company, you have these refineries, the private refineries and the government PSUs. Then you have this engineering contracting companies, the L&Ts and the Petrons and the Dotsels of the world. And there are smaller companies. When L&T picks up a job, they do not do the entire job themselves. So they basically give it to, next level contractor. When I say next level contractor, they're not small companies. They could be companies who are running revenues of 500, 600, 700 crores, right? So those kind of companies also recruit people. Offshore and onshore oil extraction centers. And there again, you have public sector undertaking and private organization. Any other hydrocarbon industry. And there are consulting organizations. In fact, I started my career with a engineering consulting organization, which was consultants for this kind of plants. They also recruit people in this. So these are the opportunities. And I just picked up this particular news item, which again came, which is about 10, 12 days old, when Indian Oil Corporation declared their results. This just came up saying that they're going to set up a paraxylene and PTA plant in Paradeep, Odisha, spending 13,800 crore. I just want all of you, I'm talking about the students, all of you to understand what are the kind of job opportunities it can throw up. You might think, okay, IOC, Indian Oil Corporation, PSU, They will go through gate process and all of that. Yes. But there are going to be other companies which have put it on the left side of this slide presentation, who are going to be associated in setting up this plant. A 13,000 crore plant is not going to be set up overnight. They're going to need people. And this is something which happened in last, this announcement came in last 10 or 12 days, or maybe 2 weeks. So this is what I was saying. While the COVID situation has brought in some kind of a slowdown in the whole process, it is not a huge slowdown. I don't think there is enough reason for us to feel sad and bad about the whole thing. All of us should look at what is it I need to do differently to get out of this situation and grab this opportunity. That's all I just want to talk about. I will just open up for questions. What are that you may want to ask about, industry related, job related, our program related, anything else that we want to. And if you have anything else outside of this also, we are more than happy to help you in whichever way we can.
Thank you, Shekaran. And it was really very crisp and whatever needed to make the excitement in the target group. So I am really excited to hear. And I just start because let others, let a deep breath, let them take, because now they may be thinking about some industries, they may be thinking about the job opportunities.
Yep.
So I didn't get it that you sent one sentence, boost MROBs in India. What is that? Can you just talk about it?
So this is very, very simple. MRO is a maintenance and repair organization, which basically provides mechanical maintenance service to airlines.
Oh, okay, very specific.
Airworks India is one of the names. Yeah, Airworks India is one of the names. So it is almost, if you look at it, is happening like software industry. What happened to software industry in India? We have the cost advantage. So today what happens is, say, Lufthansa, the German airline. Lufthansa has their own MRO, so Lufthansa could be a wrong example. Etihad of Abu Dhabi, they have the MRO service of India.
Okay.
It is much cheaper. So we can have airlines, foreign airlines coming to India to Airworks or GMR or other companies to get the service done. It is like you take your car for service to a service center, same MRO here.
Oh, okay.
So the announcement from Nirmala Sitharaman was to make India a MRO hub, because we have enough technology talent and we also have the cost advantage.
Okay. Yeah, I want to ask 2-3 that I will ask later, but I want that other members Srireka, we can open up the...
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can take it forward.
Yes, ma'am. So Akshay sir has joined with his students. He has sent a message, he has sent a mail. Akshay sir with his class. Akshay sir, if your students would like to ask any question, you have time, you can open up. I think they can unmute themselves, or
otherwise in the chat box you can.
They can put the questions in the chat box, and I can take it up with
the problem what we are facing is, I'm sorry Srilekha, because it is a continuation of what you are telling. Our students are facing the problem because of the bandwidth and the network issues, because they are all in the little remote area, and sometimes even that is the problem they are facing. So even in the class, sometimes they'll go and join again, like that it's happening. That's why they are all in mute. I think Akshay can take it forward.
Yeah, Akshay has a question, so I would like to
unmute him.
Setu, if you could unmute Akshay, sir. Akshay Nanjangud here.
Sure, ma'am. Let me check.
In the attendees, please.
Okay.
Akshay Nanjangud.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes.
We can't see you, Akshay, but we can hear you definitely.
Okay. The thing is, I've just installed this on my MacBook. I'm not able to figure out how to get the video going. So my question, my most polite question, my most uncontroversial question is, in Edge Varsity, you showed us 2 programs. I also quickly looked at the website, oil and gas and aviation. Yeah. How long are those programs? First. Second, why do engineers even need an engineering degree? Maybe they can just go to Edge Varsity after second PU and then go to the aviation industry. I'm asking, I don't know.
Yeah. So your first question, this is a self-paced e-learning model. And if somebody can spend about an hour a day, it would roughly take about, let me say it is about 120 to 130 hours of learning for a person with reasonable learning capacity. But we also understand people have different learning ability. So some people might take a 10 hours extra, some people might take 10 hours less. So rough order 120 to 130 hours of learning. And they can have their own schedule. Unlike the normal online program, we have kept it as a self-paced learning approach, because we have designed this entire program so that students can run with this particular program while they are doing their final semester. So if somebody spends about, say, 1 hour a day or 6 to 7 hours a week, it would take about 4.5 to 5 months. And your second question, today, our programs cannot be done by people just out of 12th standard, for the reason that, if you just go to, oil and gas, the first module is about engineering drawing and how it is used in industry. When we teach about that, they need to have the fundamental knowledge of engineering drawing. Similarly, when we talk about flight control of aircraft, they need to understand what is the flap and what is the slat and what is a, aileron and rudder and all of that, which is not unfortunately taught in 11th standard and 12th standard. To your question, I just want to add this also, taking time. We had a student, interestingly, 3 days ago, I had a call with a guy whose sister, who's a 12th standard student, a girl from Hyderabad, she wanted to join this program. I mean, she's passionate about aviation. She wanted to join this program while she hasn't not even decided which branch of engineering she wants to do. But then she wants to do this. But then we are trying to explain to her that, with 12th standard knowledge, it will be difficult for her to understand some of this.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Srilekha, that this quote is very nice. When going gets tough, the tough is reinvented. What is something like that you told?
The tough reinvent. Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked it actually.
Yeah.
Actually, almost all the attendees are my students. That's what I'm seeing now. Yeah. So if they can ask, Arjun
Yes.
or Duleshwar.
Please actually call their name and.
Yeah, Arjun, Abhishek, Alan, Anil, Bhagat, Bharat, Dr. B.V. Prabhu is not my student. Duleshwar, these are all my students. So Arjun, please ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
They're muted, I think. It's
yes.
Otherwise, you see the chat box.
Yeah. Arjun, you can put in your question in the chat box, or we can request that you be unmuted.
So
Alan, Arjun, feel free to ask you.
Sir?
What's your branch of teaching? Which branch are you part of?
I'm in mechanical engineering. I'm actually an aerospace engineer.
Really? Okay.
Akshay is a very popular faculty as a faculty member, and his board work is considered to be epic.
Oh.
Thank you.
Why is it unmute? It is not possible because we don't have any control over that, I think. Not just Srilekha?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask
please.
Another question, okay? This is controversial. This is controversial. The thing is, let's say that you ask a student, do you want to repair a car or do you want to design a car? He will probably choose design a car. Now, why should a student choose to repair an airplane when he could maybe design airplanes? So what I'm hinting at is maybe
I got it.
Aviation sector in India is a little bit behind. When someone is studying aerospace engineering in the US, there's a realistic chance of going to Boeing, Airbus, NASA, Lockheed Martin, all those kinds of things. So my claim now is the industry is behind. It's not, so I'm kind of joking, but you can.
But I think, no, you have a valid question. I think your question had the answer also. For example, in any industry for that matter. I was talking to one of the prospective students in the morning. Aviation design, since you come from aerospace background, aviation design, number of people required in aviation design is far, far lower than the number of people required in aviation maintenance. Point number one. Point number two, in design, there's a company that you spoke about, because I have my nephew, he's of my age. He works for Boeing here in Bangalore. He leads one of the team. He is a PhD from IIT Bombay. So basically, Boeing expect people to be either MTech or PhD and all of that. Now, you can't expect everybody to go through a PhD and post-graduation. So an engineering graduate. So look at India. Aviation, today we have 7 private airlines operating. Okay? And all of these people need aircraft maintenance engineers. So the number of people, like I said, 15% of the employees are from the engineering side in any airline. I'm quoting, people who helped us in creating this program. So that's an opportunity. Similarly, oil and gas, that is where I started my life in, right? On a project side, I come from an instrumentation background. I had one design engineer and we were 3 project engineers on site. I'm talking about one project, right? So the numbers are much higher. The opportunities are much higher. And we cannot, you're right, industry is behind, but that's an opportunity that we are living with unless you are clear that I'm going to go to US and do my master's and PhD and all of that. Some people do that, but the majority can't afford it. So that's about.
You told one sentence, industry is behind with respect to what? With respect to which country or with respect to some other industries?
Ma'am, my point is that if there is a student studying aerospace engineering in the US, SpaceX, NASA, Airbus, all these are realistic opportunities. It's very easy to motivate the student. Here, if a student is studying aerospace and mechanical engineering, it's very hard to motivate the student. That is my question.
Got it.
But I think the speaker, Mr. Menon, made a point which I keep telling my students, that if they want a real good design job, then they need to go to the core IITs, the old IITs, and then transition to the US, and then maybe that's a difficult journey. But yeah, so
that is why he is here to help us. We can also be in par with IITs.
Yeah.
So we cannot tell that. No, you go to IIT.
No, this is what I asked. No, that's the point. This is why I asked when I met somebody from L&T. So they said L&T said we have a wonderful GET program. We pick up students from NIT and IIT. We do all of that. So I asked them a question because I've been on the other side of the table. Why do you go to NIT or IIT? It is not because students who come from NIT or IIT, they have industry relevant knowledge. No, they think they have better learning ability. So 6 months of training they provide, they will pick up things faster. And for that, they pay at least 60-70% higher salary. And being a person who had been on the corporate side, if I can get good candidate, good students for a relatively lower salary, I would love it. I'm not going to IIT because I want to go to IIT. So if I can get it, and this is what we're just trying to do. So today there are companies who cannot afford an IIT level salary or an NIT level salary. That does not mean that they're doing a inferior job. A subcontractor of L&T can't do an inferior job because they have to be at the same level.
Unmute everybody, Srilekha, can you just because...
Setu, can you unmute everybody?
Duleshwar has a question.
Yeah, Duleshwar, would you like to read it up, Akshay?
Yeah, so he says, good afternoon, sir. My question is that before we graduate, many engineering graduates are so that we put I couldn't make sense.
I got the question. It is like he says, before we graduated as engineers, before we do that, there are already many engineers in the field, right? And he asked, what is a different effort we can do in order to get right opportunity, apart from like some students focus on CGPA? What is the difference we can do in terms of becoming or getting employability? I mean, that's what I think.
So this student is just in the third sem. He has 3 years. So your timeline of answer also can be long,
No, I would say, I basically say 2 things, right? I mean, having worked in corporate, I mean, everywhere in college also, the competition is something that starts from the time you walk into kindergarten and ends only when you retire. So you're always competing with somebody or other, healthy or unhealthy, depending on how you compete with them. But there's a competition. So you got to be better than rest. Now, when it comes to industry, for example, when I sit on the interview panel and talk to somebody, I would recruit somebody. Honestly, I'm being very honest here. I mean, I don't know the right to say it in front of student. I don't care so much about the marks. I care so much about how much has he understood, about a concept. It is not a theoretical knowledge, it's about the concept. So if somebody has understood the concept, that means he or she has made an attempt to understand, digest it, and use the application part. So a simple question answer could be, they should, whatever that they learn. Don't think that I'm boasting and blowing my trumpet. My son who's in 11th standard, everything that he learned about, he'll have 5 questions about it. And he didn't want to learn history and geography, saying that, what am I going to do with this? So while we complain about it, that whole thought process about whatever that we learn, he thinks about what is that I need to do with this? What am I going to do with this? That is an application part.
Yeah.
Any student, I would say, not that I've done it, right? I mean, I also went through exactly the same difficult situation that all of the students are going through. Probably more difficult situation, I couldn't even talk to somebody, right? But then over a period of time, we learned it. So whatever that I've learned, what I learned in my college about instrumentation and what I did in field is completely different, because of the same situation. So understanding how the whole thing is applied and what is happening in the industry. For example, what we do for our students, in addition to the program, we also run some kind of a web-based session by experts talking about what's happening in the industry. So when you hear about something which is happening in the industry, you start thinking in those lines and trying to connect what you learned to what is happening. That is where the linkage comes. That is where the application linkage comes. So this is a constant process. Now, you cannot stop your classmate or your batchmate from he learning or she learning something else. So the only thing you can do is you can be the best. Try and do whatever that we can do. And like I keep saying, see if you can identify the sector that he or she wants to be in and try to spend more time trying to understand more about it. There are some people who come and say, I only want to, my son, I'm just talking about this. My son didn't want to do engineering, but then his passion is automotive. So we try to explain to him that, look, you have to do engineering to be in automotive. You can't do BCom and get into automotive, right? So that way is it okay. So at least there is some level of clarity. And we think, and my daughter is a fashion designer. So at the age of, in the class of 7 or 8, she said, I want to do fashion design. So we were okay with that. So the point is that clarity of thought might also help them to fine tune their thought process. So a short answer to this question, if they can identify which area they want to be in and start understanding more about it and trying to apply whatever they learn into that reality, it might help them to get a better situation.
Yeah, I just want to talk about in colleges, universities, and institutions, we concentrate on theory. Of course, there are lab sessions. Of course, there are experts come and deliver what is recent trends in the whatever happening in the world. And sometimes there are hands-on sessions from the experts from the industry comes and teach, or maybe they go as internship. But still, we got only 24 hours. And now it is a must that 8 hours you should sleep. Because that is a new need came because of the immunity we have to develop. So how can we, again, this present situation, it is not possible hands-on, going to a company and do the work because that is restricted. So of course we have to think about only webinars and knowledge base that is. So how can, at present, how can it be linked, maybe software training or something? And after this, when everything situation become better, I don't know when it will be, all our televaccination is going to come, but still we don't know. When the on-campus also starting, I don't think so that we can full-fledged. So how can you just, for the university or institution, from your point, how can the students get that little extra other than what we are delivering within the 7 hours per day in the campus?
That's a good question. I mean, I'll just give you a small example from a mechanical engineering point of view. In mechanical engineering, my understanding, pardon me if I'm wrong, I just spoke to a student in the morning. So when you take him to a lab, what do you show him? For example, you show him let us say a valve, a globe valve or a gate valve put in the lab. You show them this is a valve. So I asked the student, have you ever had an opportunity to open up a valve and dismantle it and see what is inside? The answer was no. And most of the answers could be no, because in lab, you don't let them do that. Now, what we use here, we use this, the 3D animation and some level of augmented reality technology to give them that perspective. Another example, my classic example is in our aircraft maintenance engineering, we teach them about jet engine working, right? We have a small topic about jet engine working. What is the best way to teach jet engine? Is to take a student closer to a jet engine, to an aircraft where the engines are started, make him stand there and show them all the things. There are two difficulties. One, when the jet engine is working, you can't get closer to that, right? The aerospace engineer is saying that. Second, even if you go there, let's say you manage to go there, you have to explain to him about how the airflow happens, what happens inside, where does the combustion happen. How can you do that without opening up an engine? Now we have a demo section. If you just want to, if you find time, where we explain this using animation. And I can guarantee you that any of your student who sees that, it will be completely instead as to how the engine works. Where does the combustion happen? What are the stages of compression? LP compression, LP compressor, HP compressor, combustion, discharge, bleed air, circulation, all of that. He doesn't have to visualize, he doesn't have to think about it. So today, I'm just saying the technology is so useful today. You're able to give a much different learning experience, which you would have done otherwise, even in a classroom. I'm not saying classroom session is not important, but today that is very clear. So that's the reason we decided. In fact, we spent almost 2 months last year before we realized and started this journey as to should it be offline, should it be online, should it be blended and all of that. We did not start during COVID time. We started in 2019 February. So we realized, we looked at all of this and we said, this can give a lot of great learning experience without even having to send people somewhere. And our other need was, like you said, you might have students coming from different parts of the state and country.
Yes.
Now today, maybe they come to Bangalore because they have to do the graduation or post-graduation. But for somebody to come from, say, Davangere to Bangalore, stay here for 3 months and do a certification program, it is too much. And similarly from my hometown, it's a small town in Kerala, they have to go to Cochin and Trivandrum to do something like this. So for them, now today, thanks to Jio and all other telecom operators, connectivity is not a big deal. So see how we make use of the connectivity to get this better learning experience. So this entire online thing can give you this complete experience. And this is where I would suggest some of your students, Mr. Nanjangutkar, you can suggest some of your students to just take a look at it. Whether they use it or not is a different thing. They'll be able to appreciate it as to how different that is. How are we able to deliver this in a better situation? So online, because the moment everybody says online, we have a little mind block in our head, say, okay, I can't touch and feel it, right? I don't get an experience of that. I think we have overcome that in a great level. And when we demonstrated this to our partner, the certifying partner, which is an EASA approved training center out of Frankfurt, we had one trainer from Lufthansa who's a consulting trainer there. He was impressed. He said, this is fantastic. And one university in Germany, when we demonstrated this, they said, this is awesome. So we are able to do that. And today the technology is available. It is only a matter of using the technology and doing best of it.
In the chat, anything else is there, Srilekha?
No, no further questions. Students, you can unmute yourselves and ask any question.
Maybe I can just put one comment here. You can respond. I think the advantage that you have with your institution, with Edge Varsity, is you're very specific, not only to the aerospace sector, you're very specific to maintenance, repair, and so you're targeting a very specific thing. On the other hand, we as a university have to, build a very well-rounded engineer who can tackle the problem from the fundamentals. Everything. You have to do this broad, deep thing.
True.
On the other hand, you have this. So I think, your Edge Varsity can, maybe a student finishes engineering, then he has an idea, he likes aerospace maintenance, then he comes to you, and then he has all the fundamentals in place. So there can be a kind of finishing road.
It's a finishing school kind of thing. Yeah. So in fact, that is what NEET and AICT is trying to do through NEET. They're trying to do exactly, because you cannot, this is not a substitute for engineering education. That's what I try to answer you for your first question. Because they need to have the broad-based understanding. They need to have the foundation. It is almost like building. So we are just building a small room on the foundation that you have built. That room becomes the critical room, because that's more like a bedroom.
Yeah.
Everything else. So you need a bedroom to do that. So it is just specific. And trying to do that, because our plan, today we have 2 programs. Our plan is to come up with various programs over a period of time to cover all aspects of engineering.
Yeah.
And like I said, our punch word is enhancing the employability of youngsters. And I would say, I just making a joke the other day, even if you're able to improve the life of 10 or 15 or 20,000 engineers, that's going to be a great achievement.
True, very true.
It is more than the business. There's a huge social impact on that.
I think our next webinar should be Akshay. Maybe how to ask questions. No, I am telling our students, even in the class, I tell you this always, I'll tell everywhere, you harass me with your questions. I am ready to take it. Think that, oh, this madam is so boring. then ask. The best way to attack a teacher is ask first. Even if you don't know something from Google, and ask. And at least that way they can learn how to ask. That is what we have to encourage her.
No, there could be a fear. There could be a fear because some of the people felt as ridicule. Right? I mean, they think it's a ridiculous question, a stupid question. So people may not be comfortable.
Okay. Yeah.
But what I just want to leave a thought with is, I mean, any of your students, your current students or your passing out students, whoever, like I said, any help they think they can get from us, we are more than happy. Whether they become part of our program or not, that's a secondary thing. They think, for example, I spent 1 hour talking to somebody, suggesting, he had questions about what kind of a salary can I expect if I, join an oil and gas industry. Not that I know I have answer for everything, but then I try and, share whatever that I know. It's fine.
So there are 2 questions too. One is from DM Tarun. It says, I'll just read it out. It's in the Q&A. Thank you so much for enlightening us with your experience, which you have had throughout the years. Few moments ago, you had put emphasis on how important it is to develop soft skills as a side hustle thing. Could you talk us through your experience on developing your soft skills through your days? That is Tarun.
Let me open my when I went for my first interview, I couldn't speak in English. I was shivering. I come from a small town in Kerala. Even before I decided to go to Bombay, that's where I started my life. I went for an interview in Coimbatore. I was shivering because I couldn't speak in English. Then I realized I'm going to be stuck if I don't do that. And those days, I sound like an old man. Those days we didn't have BBC programs and all that available for you to listen to. And that is when I started reading English newspaper to develop this. And I did not study in an English medium school, unlike Sudesh. Sudesh came from an English medium school.
I am also one Malayalam medium lady here.
Yeah. So it was a struggle. Then I realized if this is not done, you're stuck. And that is where you started doing so. So my experience was when I realized that this is something I got to do. And when I landed in Bombay, because in my school also I studied in a technical school. So after 7th standard, I didn't learn Hindi. And Malayalis and Hindis are like, poles apart. And the only word I knew when I landed in Bombay was nahi. Today I can speak reasonably good Hindi, having spent time in Delhi and UP and all of that. So basically understanding the need and learning, you have to put the effort. Nobody's going to come and teach you that. So in Subek's days, in early days, we also conducted Toastmasters Club in our thing because many of us had the same problem. Because I've been a sales guy. If I can't speak, I'm stuck. I'm dead. So I have to explain to people as to what am I trying to sell them. So identifying the problem and then trying to put sincere effort to do something about it. And I've seen many people, I've done a decent job and I've seen many such people who have done a decent job of picking up things. So, it's an important thing, and which is why we said soft skill. And, it is not just about communication, the language. Today, if you look at IT, if I'm interviewing software engineers, I don't need to even speak to him, right? I give him a problem, he will write a program, he doesn't even speak, he will give it to you. But then for a mechanical engineer or an electronic engineer or an electrical engineer, you need to speak. And if he or she is not able to speak properly, you have a problem. And incidentally, in India, all businesses run in English. So without English, you're pretty much stuck. Though there are some people who say, you have to focus on your mother tongue. You can't be doing this. I agree with all of that, but then you need to have English to be surviving. And we also had an experience of dealing with international market. In my initial days, I couldn't understand what a British was talking. It was difficult. So I had to go very closely to the ears and say, what is he saying? The accent issue and all of that. So then you start developing it. If I have to sell something to a Britisher, I need to understand what he's saying. So it is just understanding that and then trying to do something about it.
Akshay, I think you have to leave. You want to go for a meeting. I understand that. Yeah, you can leave. Akshay, thanks for joining, Akshay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Even Tarun is my student.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, okay, credits go to your section students.
I know, absolutely.
Very, very nice. Yeah. So
there's one.
Tell me.
There's one question from Prabhu sir. It says, suggest some simple tips to make lectures practically oriented.
Oh my God.
Prabhu sir, yeah.
To be very honest, that's beyond me because I'm not a teacher. I don't think I'm a good teacher either. So I don't think I can give a sensible answer to a teacher as to what it should be. The only simple answer I can give is trying to pick up some real life examples and trying to explain that.
That's what even suddenly came to my mind as a Srilekha, if no more questions, I think we can just conclude. And before you conclude, I just want to really thankful to you, Sekaran. And
thank you for this opportunity. I also like it.
Yeah, no, the thing is, I think we need more of these sessions, in depth. So let us see when on campus, maybe another few months, so that you can interact with the students and maybe if they can get some tips from you, so that they are well employed or better employed. So that's what I'm looking forward. Srilekha, you can hear.
So when you said you have this placement training for your students who are just passing out this year.
Yes.
I don't know when those people are part of this. If you think we need to run something in these lines for them, I'm more than happy to do it.
Yes, we'll look into that.
Thank you. So thank you so much for this wonderful session. I just want to read what Setu has shared here. Please do share your feedback in the Google form that is shared in the chat box. This is for all the participants who have attended the webinar. Please do put in your feedback in the Google sheet. That will be really helpful for Edgevarsity. And yes, the session was very interesting and very relevant and very engaging. I wish more students had, of course, opened up and spoken more. But yes, as ma'am said, that is how it happens sometimes. But we really enjoyed the session and we thank you. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for joining and making this session so interesting. As a soft skill trainer myself, I understand the importance of language and public speaking and Toastmasters. And at DSA, we continue to create these kind of experiences for students. So like ma'am said, we'll be probably contacting you so that you can interact with the students or one-on-one. Let's see how that happens. But thank you again, once again. Thank you, Edgevarsity. Thank you, Sekaran Menon. Thank you for joining us today. It was a very beautiful interaction. Chris,
thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Srilekha.